What's the main official function of the board of directors? What can you expect from a board? What power does the board have? How do you assemble a board of directors? Any characteristics for a great chairman of the board? A bit about the community breakfast concept. So the idea is to bring once a month members and people around the ecosystem together for a bit of a breakfast, networking, and then some learnings. And for the learnings, we try to find experts in the domain that they're speaking. We don't just want to showcase companies, but it's more about the actual value in learnings and experience that they can bring. So today we have one expert and a high-level one. So our speaker is a man who has seen it all, from co-founder and product sales to chairman roles and scaling from 15 people to IPO and launching US offices in Silicon Valley. A strategic thinker and a super networker, he can call on more than 2 decades of experience of entrepreneurship, startups, VC and angel investing. When he's not polishing his US motors, you'll find him either hunting down his second hole-in-one or swearing at iron at CrossFit Kirkkonummi. Let's give a round of applause for Sami Ahvenniemi. Welcome. Perfect. Welcome, Sami, and good morning. Nice to have you here.
Good morning. Happy to be here, for sure.
I have to say, chasing down your second hole-in-one means that you already have gotten one, and I have to say, with playing golf for 20 years, I have not gotten mine, so that's an achievement.
This is a really good start to a board work seminar, I guess, but I actually have 2. Last year in Finnish Venture Capital Association golf tournament, I actually holed on the part 3 that was supposed to be the closest to the hole. The ball went all the way to the bottom of the cup and flew out and went 8 meters away from the cup. So I have 2, but the second one didn't count, I guess.
Yeah, so you have that little bitterness there to really chase on the second one. Okay, but today our topic is regarding board work and how a startup can kind of create a board that really brings value to the growth of your company. But before we jump on that topic, I'd like to hear a bit more about some of you and Vendep. So if you can give a brief introduction on what Vendep Capital, for example, invests in, and how did you find your way to Vendep?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. The long intro you did was kind of embarrassing. But basically about myself. So I'm general partner at Vendep today. History spans a long time on doing multiple different things, but mostly in VC, investing in startups, mostly software. So roles ranging from being a chairman of a stock listed company to actually doing hands-on sales in Silicon Valley, selling to a lot of the logos that don't really exist even today. So I've sold to the likes of Lucent, Nortel, but also and Sun Microsystems, but also some that survive like Cisco. So actually also hands-on customer interface work over the years. More importantly, about Vendep Capital, we are a Nordic Baltic B2B SaaS fund, and we invest typically from pre-seed to Series A as an entry point. Our ticket sizes range from, let's say, 2 to 300K, all the way to maybe about 3 million at entry at Series A. Very often syndicating with existing angels, pre-seed funds, and then at later stages, of course, with Series A funds. And our claim to fame really is B2B SaaS. Everybody in our 25 company portfolio basically is B2B SaaS company. So through that, there's huge synergies in the portfolio. There's companies that are pre-seed, and there are companies that have already raised D rounds. bringing you founders together at different stages actually brings a lot of value to everybody. Also for the guy that is at Series D, yeah, kind of seeing what doing things at the early stages is like still today. I don't know. Maybe that's it, right?
That's it. That's a great one. That's a great one. So then moving into the main topic of today, we maybe have this structured a bit in 4 different phases. So going a bit over kind of board work in general, then touching on assembling the board, and then in the end as well, like the actual board work. And in the end, we will have plenty of time for questions, your questions. So then we will have an open mic for that. Shall we jump in?
Let's do it.
So, Sami, straight out of the bat, what's the main official function of the board of directors?
Let's start with the high level official things, and then hopefully towards the end of or middle of the session you get some hands-on advice as well. And of course, opinions are of my own. They're typically very strong, and not always all people think they're right. But take home whatever you feel like from this. But of course, the formal role of the board in a company is really to oversee everything in the company, ranging from hiring and firing a CEO to really overseeing accounting, bookkeeping, closing of the books, as well as confirming the strategy, building the strategy. It's always the management team preparing for things, but then it's the board actually deciding this is our strategy going forward. So there are some very formal parts in that, and then there's a million different informal parts of it. And what you get out of your board outside of the formal things that board has to do, make sure your balance sheet is in order, your equity capital is adequate, and things like that. There's a lot of other things that you can really turn to your board for if you build your board in a right way.
Wonderful. Then, kind of continuing on that, what can you expect from a board and what not? You mentioned about going beyond the kind of legal kind of what is required from the board, but after that, what can you expect and what not?
And board, of course, board changes quite a lot from if you're a pre-seed company, a couple founders, maybe one angel or one pre-seed fund, your board is going to be very different from what it is at, let's say, Series B or Series C, when you have 5 VCs and they're all fighting to have a seat on your board. So the work really changes, and in a way, the role of the board also very much changes over the years. But board is basically as good as you as a founder kind of build it to be together with your investors. Sometimes it gets out of hand and you can't really do anything about it. But if you pick your board members in a right way, it can really be a significant resource for your thinking of where to take the company, how to build the company. So I think it really comes down to selecting the right board members for the state of your company. Very often board likes to help you with strategic thinking, being a sounding board of should I decide like this or like this, or what should I do? And that's also, I think, where kind of what I'm trying to be as a board member, what the Vendep team is trying to be as a board member is really, I think the important thing is being the sounding board for the CEO and for the management to test their ideas, to validate their ideas before deploying, things forward.
So you mentioned there the investor being on the board. We've heard that a lot of investors want the board seats, want the control. So a bit about the control. What power does the board have? What is the control that the investors and are seeking for?
The board really constantly monitors the performance of the company, performance of the CEO, and in good and bad. Board is really deciding whether the CEO should continue. If the board still continues to trust in the CEO actually building the company, in the right way. And that's something that, even the founder CEOs should kind of realize, that it's your every day you're measured for your performance as a CEO. And that's one really, really like formal part of it. And that's not like, as a CEO, as a founder, you don't need to be scared about it. It's just everyday life. And actually, in many boards where I've been involved with, we typically have a post-board session where we basically kick out the whole management, and we're just taking maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, thinking about how does the team actually perform. And you can be intimidated by it first, but then you realize they do this after every meeting. And once that 10 minutes is done, we typically come back saying, we think you guys are doing super well. Maybe you should think about this, and this a little bit more as a team. But it's sometimes it's formalized, not always, especially when you have US VCs involved. There's a lot of things that gets formalized like that. But I've actually, once the team realizes we're not there to hack them out of the team, we're there to actually think about how can we support this team in a better way. But having that as a closed session, I think people speak more freely, and ideas flow more freely than when the whole management team would be actually still in the board meeting. I don't know what tangent I went off, but
let's go with it. Let's go with it. Then we've discussed now kind of the jobs, the power of the board, the life cycle. We went through it a bit, but then when a founder is starting to build their board, and I think here a life cycle kind of view is good. So when you're first starting to build your board, how do you assemble a board of directors?
I mean, very very typical early stage board is actually before you get an initial investment or pre-seed fund to join. It's typically just the founders. And that actually then the board doesn't really kind of have a function. You sign some papers when formal decision needs to be filed somewhere, and that's fine and dandy. And I think it's just more productive that way anyway. So don't run board meetings just to run board meetings at an early stage company. And I think even when we join a company at pre-seed stage, we don't require that every month there needs to be a board meeting. You need to create a board report, and we need to go through it and review your progress and all that. At the early stage, that's nonsense. It does not actually help the company proceed. I think the relationship in that between maybe your board members and the investor is more about, let's grab a coffee in the morning, let's talk through things. And if there's a formal decision that needs to be made, then we just put it on paper and sign the paper. But that, of course, then progresses as you get more VCs. And as said, I think the worst situation is when you get to like round B or C and you have 4 VCs and they're all fighting for their seat in the board. And then all of a sudden you end up with a board that has 4 VCs and 2 independent members or 2 founder members, and then it really becomes a shit show, to be honest. And that's one advice, maybe concrete advice for you, is that when you go from funding round to funding round, always have the open dialogue when you're bringing a new investor. So you're a seed round lead now. We welcome you to the board, and great, and hopefully we have very productive board work. But make sure you realize that as we raise A, as we raise B, C, your board seat today is there, but it may not be there on the following rounds. Because if you anyway indicate that they might be on your board forever, you end up with 4 VCs, 5 VCs on your board of directors. And again, it's a shit show. So when you form your board, try to bring in independents. If you read the internet, they tend to say you need a financial expert, you need a marketing expert, you need a sales expert. I throw all of that away and really think that what does the company need? What is the most suitable background for a board member? And very often, what boards are missing is the customer view of the business of the company. And in that, I really would vouch for bringing in somebody from your target market, from your customer base, to the board. And of course, sometimes you can't really avoid having the 4th VC board members, but then you probably want to form like an advisory board on the side that comes more from the industry and can help you with more practical things than the VC members. But also with the VC members, make sure you really, and this goes to a kind of fundraising advice, but when you go out and fundraise, think really carefully that what is the fund that you're bringing on board, and who's the partner in that company that you're bringing to your board, because these things really they're important for really long term for the company's success. So make sure you do a reverse job interview with your VC members when you're in the fundraising process, because it's super important to pick the right people to your board. It's not always that you should choose the one with the highest valuation offer or the biggest pocket, biggest money in the round. That's not necessarily always the best option for you. Neo4j, for example, we had this dates way back, so I guess I can talk about it in public, but we had a great term sheet from one of the top tier Silicon Valley guys, but we ended up going with Chris Parchak at Fidelity, because the match of Chris's background to the stage of the company was so much better than the kind of junior partner at the Silicon Valley top tier firm. And also the way VCs kind of manage you, what they require from you are very different. So make sure you really dig through these things before you choose the fund and the general partner to partner in the fund to be the board member in your board. If you're so lucky that there's more than one that are giving you money, right?
So you mentioned there a good case, and then as well a bit about the customer view, but more in depth, more maybe on a personal fit. Could you name 3 characteristics that kind of describe a good board member, or what you should look out for when selecting those? What type of people?
I think the personal chemistry is really important. You need to really get along with the guy, with the girl, but also the wider context. If you look at the investor, the VC firm, just think through what are their basic principles, what are they aiming for, and it's not always the most senior guy, somebody with 50 years of experience. It's not necessarily always the best board member. I think better board members are those that are maybe just a little bit ahead of you in the career. They've seen a little bit more. But I mean, again, like if you've been an executive in Compaq in the 80s, that doesn't necessarily make you a best board member to a B2B SaaS company today. So kind of try to really see through the CVs, and I typically, let's move forward. So another thing is really the ability to think strategically, because I mean that really should be the board, like really think through like 5 years ahead, like where are we really headed, and then kind of back from that to today, what needs to happen today for us to be where we need to be in 5 years. So being really able to think kind of strategically, I think it's one of the most important features in a board member.
Great. Then on compensation, should you compensate the board, and how? If so, how do you motivate them to be on the board?
I think this also kind of changes with the stage of the company. I don't have strong opinions. I typically prefer compensating independent board members through options, because that creates the same kind of a long-term strategic driver for their work as there is for you as a founder of the company or CEO of the company. I mean, especially at the early stage, I mean, the money shouldn't go to board members. The money should go in the company to develop the company. And if your board member doesn't have that kind of heart in the game, the strong interest to help you, their strong interest is to make 3,000 euros a month as a board member, then I think you're looking at the wrong member. So I'd say you can compensate. Sometimes you need to compensate in order to get the great guys. But I would try to compensate more with options than actually cash, because cash is short-term, options are really long-term.
Awesome. Then there's always one person in the board that has to kind of keep the work going on, the chairman. Any characteristics for a great chairman of the board?
Again, I've been chairman on the board for many companies, and I've seen good chairmen, I've seen bad chairmen. I think overall ability to keep the herd together is really important. So, almost in every board you have members that like to go on a tangent, like maybe me sometimes. So having a board member that can bring people together, keep things organized, keep things somewhat in schedule. But I also do not like the board member that is time boxing everything. And even if there's really meaningful discussion ongoing, they'll just basically shut it off because time is up, 15 minutes on this topic is up, we need to move forward. Because at the startup, sometimes you just need to spend 3 hours talking about something before making the decision, making sure that everybody's aligned, you understand all the nuances of the decision before you really make a decision. So I don't think there's like a one mold that you should look for. And again, I tend to emphasize the chemistry between the board, the chairman, and yourself. But I think it's really important that you get along. I mean, there's so many different types of board directors and chairmen that it's I don't think you can just say that there's some certain things in there. Yeah.
Okay, then there's the working pair of the CEO and the chairman of the board. How's the relationship usually, and how should it be between them?
A lot of kind of opinionated answers probably, but I mean, and again, there's no one correct style. But at best, the chairman really is there to support the CEO like every day. Whatever your question is, whatever you need help on, being the sounding board available whenever. But also, the chairman should really push you as the CEO to do better. And so I think it's kind of a two-way street in a way. Chairman should keep everything under control, but at the same time, he should push you as a CEO to do better, go forward, move the company forward.
When you're a chairman of a board, how often do you communicate with the CEO?
And again, there's multiple different ways. Sometimes I tend to prefer like Slack channels for the whole board, so that whenever there's a discussion ongoing, messages flying by, everybody is kind of on the same page. They know what's being discussed, even if it's just the chairman or one member and the CEO, exchanging thoughts. So I mean, I again, like there's no one thing, but I'd really vote for creating a Slack channel or WhatsApp group or whatever, some vehicle where it's easier to keep everybody up to date on what's going on between the CEO and the chairman and CEO and board members. So that's certainly there. And I mean, it's as a board member, as the chairman, you need to be available for the company, for the management team, for the CEO, like 24/7. Sometimes just sudden things come up in the middle of the night. We're in global business. There may be a customer on the West Coast in the US needing an exception to your liability limitation in your contract, and you want to sign it right away. So you need to get the board to approve it, even if it's the middle of the night, because you want to sign that contract. You want to get it going, move the customer forward. But if you think of like the frequency of the board meeting, again, like at the early stage, could be that there's only like maybe handful, 3, 4, 5 formal board meetings per year. Maybe not even that, just signing your audited books once in a year. But there can be quite a lot of informal, discussions within the board. Having morning coffee at Maria, just going over some things that you want feedback on. But of course, then when you get bigger, you get more funding rounds, more VCs on the board. It tends to become more formalized. You formally meet maybe 8 times a year, and something online, something in person. And I really like going on a tangent where I really recommend that you keep about 4 board meetings at least in person in a longer format, so that your board, your management team can really exchange ideas, really talk things through. Online meetings tend to be short, more in a reporting format. Typically just 1 or 2 of the guys are really talking, and then the rest of them are just kind of hanging out, listening in, and that really is not very helpful for the company. So I really recommend even doing them as an offsite, or another kind of a little tip here is that if you have an industry conference that is like really center of the industry, tie your board meeting to a conference, take your whole board, buy them tickets to join the conference, hear some of the talks, so they actually learn more about your industry. And then have a board meeting there, like a long format board meeting. You can talk about what they learned in the show, and then you have a chance to have them all together at the same time. So have those face-to-face more meetings, longer format, really exchanging ideas. Once a year, really long, like a strategic, kind of an offsite. Maybe tied to your budget work, and then mid-year another really long one, just to kind of do a mid-year check of how things are. But again, changes quite a lot from pre-seed to Series B. Series B, super formalized, typically time-boxed agendas and whatnot. So,
But I think that's a great tip that takes us kind of to the next one. So moving more to the focus of your next board meeting, where you can actually affect on the next one. So kind of what does a great board meeting look like from your point of view?
I'll go on a tangent again on this, but when you're prepping for an upcoming board meeting, I think the best CEOs, best management teams actually prime the board before the board meeting. If you need any type of a major decision, even some smaller decision to be made at the board meeting, don't wait for the board to actually come to the room, look at the decision proposal and just saying, yes, this is great, let's go. Prime the board. So have short calls, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, one-to-one, each board member, week before, 2 weeks before. Explain what you're trying to do in the board meeting. What are the decisions you're looking to make? Brief them, give them the chance to give their opinion, their view one-on-one. And then you have still maybe week, 2 weeks to actually embed that feedback into the decision, which means that then the board meeting itself, the decision itself, is going to be just signing off at the board meeting. But if you bring, let's say you have 6 board members, 3 VCs, 2 independents, one founder, and then you feel the budget at the board meeting or any bigger decision at the board meeting, I guarantee 100% that it will be tabled, and the decision is not going to be made in that board meeting. So prime your board in advance, make sure they know what's coming up, give them the chance to voice their opinion before it's formalized as a decision.
That answer it. Any additional tips or tricks for preparing? I heard there was a lot of prepare. Any tips or tricks for that? Like what to prepare?
Another thing, and I don't know if this is on a CEO or the chairman, but it's really divide the board meeting in at least 2 parts, where you have the formal decision part. So you basically have the decisions time boxed. This is where we decide on just like option grants. Let's decide on these things. This guy gets that much, and great, it's all done. And then you have the discussion part of the board. So time box the decisions, make sure they get made, and then go into the discussion part where it's more open ideas, more discussion, and so forth. That ensures that you get the decisions through, because when you do not time box, when you do not really manage it in that way, it's typically long talks up front and then rushed decisions at the end. So make sure you drive those decisions through and then open the floor for the discussion items in the agenda. Another thing that I really highly prefer and recommend, and it's not because I like good food and wine, but when you have a board meeting in the morning and you have people flying in from all over the world, you're at Series A, Series B, have a board dinner the night before the board meeting. Super huge benefits for you as a CEO in order to have an efficient board. Give them the chance the night before to have all the chit chat, how's the kids doing, who's going to kindergarten, who's going to university, whatnot. Have that discussion the night before. Give them also the chance to still maybe ask questions about the material you produced for the board meeting before the formal board. And then you also ensure that that one guy from London flying off of Heathrow coming to Helsinki is not going to be 1 hour late because Heathrow was congested, so he didn't get out of Heathrow in time, and now the whole board meeting is delayed by an hour in the morning. Super practical. Force them to join you for the dinner the night before. That means the meeting starts at 9. Everybody, there's no ice breaking, there's no chit chat in the beginning. Everybody's ready to go. As simple as that.
That's a great one. That's a great one. We touch upon strategy a few times already in this discussion, and you mentioned it's important to kind of find people that can think strategically. How do you use the board for your strategy work?
Maybe we'll do this through an example. Neo4j, even the early years, it was just us. I was at Corner Venture Partners at the time, seed round at Neo4j together with what was back then Sunstone, now they're called Hardcore. But basically, once a year, we went out to a pig farm outside of Malmö in southern Sweden for 2-day session. And it was management team prepping for a little bit, doing some slide decks, and then 2 days of open discussion, really brainstorming on how to really build the company further. We were basically first two VC members, a couple independents, the whole management team, and of course then year by year, we added people to it. But great sessions, and I believe the company, the management team, really got value out of those sessions. They really kind of shaped our strategy, shaped our positioning in the market against competition and whatnot. But I really recommend, and again, I like good food and wine and whatnot, but it was really work in between the dinners. But I think it's just for strategy work, you really need to take the time. You really need to let the ideas flow before then starting to condense things into more formalized plans and decisions.
The interesting thing is that you've been on the both sides of the table when it comes to fundraising. So how could you utilize your board work in fundraising?
That's a great question, and I don't think we didn't plan it, but Vendep has significantly helped our companies in their follow-on funding rounds. We know a lot of the VCs in Europe and in the US, and through that we're able to kind of tell the founder that this firm, this partner is an exact match for your business. But I mean, that's how you do it. I mean, make sure overall, the board, you should really actually, when you start planning for the next funding round, when you're creating your deck for the next funding round, force yourself to pitch that deck, pitch to your board to get feedback. I mean, they know you, so they'll give you an honest, straight feedback of, never say it like that. That will not work with any VC. Remove that. Just force yourself to do it, and your board is probably totally happy to do it. Take that pitch and give you that feedback. But also, your board members typically are more senior than you. Hopefully, you have board members that actually have fundraised before themselves for their own companies. They can be tremendous help in defining who to raise from, what the story needs to be, what the process should be, and how to really drive it through in an efficient way. World is full of VCs today, and I'm frustrated for the amount of business plans we get from all over the world. Obviously, from people that never visited our website to actually see what do we invest in, what regions do we invest in, what states do we invest in, So if you're one of those guys that are just spamming your pitch deck to everybody out there, stop it right away. Don't do that. That is waste of your time. That is waste of everybody's time. That will not work. think through who's the VC I want, who's the partner I want. Do they invest? Is there something similar in the portfolio before you actually contact these guys? Because otherwise you're wasting your time totally. So I'm big proponent of really focused effort over just trying to cover the whole market. And in that, your board should be able to make the warm intros and actually help you in understanding who to really talk to, who to contact.
Thank you, Sami. Now we will open up the floor for any questions the audience might have. So we have 2 mics, I believe, at least one. So Josephine has a mic. So if you have a question, and hopefully we have plenty, just raise your hand and Josephine will bring the mic to you. Please say the question loud and clear to the mic.
So while you're thinking through your questions, one additional advice that I never got to is that, and you kind of try to I think root it in, but make sure you really prep well for the board meetings in the sense that produce the material you're wanting to produce it early, send it out early, even if there are some parts of it that you need to update before the board meeting. Don't wait that update to be ready. But make sure you send your deck, send the agenda like week and a half before the board meeting, because that makes things so much more efficient. It's totally fine that in the morning of the board meeting, you put in like the latest sales pipeline, for example, when you report your pipeline. But make sure that most of the deck is out there early enough for the board members to spend time, think it through, maybe even ask those questions, have that 15-minute call with you to go over some things. But try to avoid as much as possible sending the deck the night before, because that's just going to be a pain for everybody. You have board that have not seen your deck, do not know what you're going to decide today, and it's just everything is just gonna get out of hand because of that. So it still takes the same time, so why not do it early, right?
Please.
I'm scared.
Hello.
Sanni is gonna ask a question.
Hello, I'm Sami from Superhero, and I'm wondering, do you have the vastuuvakuutus?
Oh, good point.
Because we haven't been able to find any insurance company who would be able to provide it.
Yeah, that depends, of course, where the board is and where the board members are. But yeah, I hear you. I think we found something somewhere, so let's connect later. If you have US board members, if you're turning to be a US company, Hartford is the company in the US, but I'm not sure if they do Finnish boards.
Thanks, Sami. My name is Mikko Huumo, SCB Greentech Venture Capital. I really enjoyed the conversation around the independent board member. You touched that, and I'm a great fan of having options as a compensation instead of cash, especially in the early days. Would you still elaborate your best practices in terms of attracting those guys who you want to invite as an independent board member, and also including the compensation? How do you build the plan to compensate with options? What's your best practice?
Let's take the easy part. How you do the compensation. I typically look to do like 2 to 3 year plans. So options vesting month to month, equal proportions over the 3 years. And when it's a board member, there's no reason to be a cliff in the plan. But they start earning the day one because they start contributing the day one, and it's a different position to be a board member than to be an operational team member. So in that sense, I think that's straightforward. Now, what is the percentage? I think it depends also kind of on the seniority of the guy, the stage of the company. I mean, at pre-seed stage, it can be even 1%, chairman maybe 2%. It really depends on what do you expect from the person, how much you expect to use the person. Now, finding the right guys, use your network. Ask co-founders, ask the founders in other companies, ask the VCs, ask everybody you know that who are value adding and kind of fit for your company. But also be bold. You go to industry conferences globally, actually even the hottest guys in Silicon Valley, they're very approachable. Pull their sleeve and start chatting with them, and maybe a little later they join your board. I mean, Neo4j, I think this was Series A. Emil, super young founder, very enthusiastic about the business. Wedging himself in every discussion globally on databases. He just ended up building a really great relationship with Rod Johnson, the founder of SpringSource, and all of a sudden Rod invested a couple $100K in the company and became a chairman. So be bold. I mean, your business is not any worse than anybody else's business out there. So actually, if you think somebody in the industry is perfect match for you and you're validated somehow, go for it. I mean, they might join.
Hi, I'm Laurie. Thanks for the talk. Sort of continuing on that same topic, at what stage do you typically see independent directors coming in the picture? Is there some kind of pattern?
I mean, as I said, pre-seed is typically very informalized. Maybe your angel and 2 founders in the board, whatnot. But then independents typically get formalized at seed stage when actually VC enters. And then all of a sudden on the term seed, you see like these weird clauses of you have to have 5-member board and I need a seat, and then we'll give a seat to somebody else, and then together we'll find an independent to be a board member. These very typical terms. But I mean, that's typically a requirement by the VC that you find independent members when VC enters. But I don't think there's like a right or wrong moment in the company life cycle. I mean, if you find a value adding independent at pre-seed or even pre-founding, just grab them if they're willing to join. It's more about, do you feel these people will actually add value to the company, add value to your thought process, and bring them on whenever you're able to. So I don't think there's like a right moment or wrong moment, but VC rounds do force you to actually hire independent members. And this is now the shit show that you're creating when you have four VCs and they all will not give up their board seat. And now each of them require that you bring in the independents. So you have 2 independents, then you maybe have a chairman, and then you have a founder seat. And then everybody's bringing observers. And all of a sudden, when your board meeting is 20 people. I mean, Behavior-Sec, where I was chairman for a long time, and then an independent board member. I think at worst, we have like 17 people in the room in a board meeting because every VC had a board member, every VC had an observer rights, and then you had the independents, and then you had the founders, and then you bring in the management team, and maybe then you bring in 1 or 2 special advisors for that board member, for that board meeting for certain topic. And all of a sudden, you're actually running a conference rather than a board meeting.
Hi. Wandile Zulu from Johannesburg, South Africa. Would you invest in a startup without board members, but brilliant founders and excellent product?
Yeah, I mean, I never invest in the board. I invest in the idea, the product, the team, the market. Board is really easy to bring in and build. Great products are really hard to build. So, yeah, I don't think, and this is also, this is an opinion, as I said, I give opinions, take them or just ignore them. But I mean, having your board of directors on your pitch deck, I don't get it. Like, why do you have your board on the pitch deck? They're not building your business, they're your sounding board. So having management team members on the board deck is far superiorly important than the board. If you have a really great industry board member, maybe bring that up. But like saying Sami from Vendep is on my board, you should invest. That's nonsense.
I'm Janne Pitkinen from Adu, so I would like to ask, because you said that because founders are in early stage, they are choosing like board members and affecting that quite a lot. So, but what what are your tricks to change the mode of board from that actually the CEO or the founder is running the board, all the administration, reporting, bringing everything in. So how you make it, of course, taking a VC investment, but what are the other tricks around that to make the board more kind of self-sustaining?
I mean, that's actually a really good question, and I think as soon as you have investors in the company, in the board, you as a CEO, I would actually start bringing your management team to the board meetings, not the full meeting, but the kind of the reporting part. When you're reporting sales pipeline, when you're reporting marketing progress, things like that, bring in the guys to actually firsthand tell the board what's going on. There's two benefits. You know, the board sees how quality management team you've been able to recruit, but then also you create direct connections between your board members and the management team members, and you kind of obviously there's this match created there. Your CMO realizes this guy actually understands something about marketing, so I'm going to call him later as well. So my advice is that just bring in the management team when you get to a certain size. I mean, again, you know, pre-seed, it doesn't make any sense. You are the board and you are the management team. But when the board gets a little bit formalized, don't try to be the, you know, single guy show in the board as a CEO. Bring in the other guys, create those connections. And again, the board dinner the night before is great in that, because, you know, make sure you seat people in a different ways so that these connections are created and links are created. But I think that would be my advice. I mean, bring more of the management team to the board meetings, and then when you start talking about something that not the whole management should be involved with, kick them out.
My name is Dmitry from startup Digital City Planner. The concept of diversity is very popular now, and so how important is it? For example, of course, I understand that skills diversity is important, but what about nationalities, cultures, and other aspects? And when is it important?
Diversity is important, but I think it's also very natural when you start creating your board. I mean, sometimes you need to pay special attention to it, make sure you look at the world in the way that you kind of add, the skill sets kind of add on top of each other. But I think my advice would be that get the best, most suitable people to your board you're able to get. You know, aim high and try to get the best people for your stage, no matter what you know, what their skin color is, or whether they're guys or girls, or, you know, just shoot for the best possible board for the stage of your company, for the business of your company. But diversity opens thinking overall. I mean, of course, you don't want your board to be like 5 of your customers or 5 of your partners, or like, you need to diversify in multiple different axes, right?
Raimo Linnavirta, Trint Ventures. Building up of questions that there were earlier about the compensation and when to bring the board members in, and maybe be directing the founders to the direction that don't break your cap table too early. So how much you would expect, first of all, do you count the board members' stake as part of the team stake, and how much you expect the team to have, let's say, in seed round? So if you gave 15% to the first advisor that walks in, are you already doomed?
Thank you for that. When I ask for the team ownership, I typically ask the team that give me the ownership of the people that come through the front door of your office every morning. And that's what's important, because those are the people that really build the success of the company. Now, if your chairman is on contract with you to spend 3 days a week, actually as an executive chairman, being there then I can consider the chairman kind of ownership to be part of the team ownership. But the board ownership overall is not the same as the team ownership. It's not the board guys that wake up 10 p.m. taking calls from California to close a deal. So in that sense, no. And then what should the team ownership be at the seed stage? And this is great question really, because so many cap tables are so screwed up. I mean, the perfect cap table, the team owns 100% when they come to us, right? But of course, when you bring in the board members, when you bring in advisors, you need to give them something. I think it's more important that you do the cap table modeling so that by the time you hit B round, the team still owns north of 50% of the company. And then you can start calculating back from that. What does it mean at EA round? What does it mean at seed round? What does it mean at pre-seed round? But I mean, do everything you can not to dilute more than 20% at your pre-seed. I mean, we really like 15% to be like the right dilution at pre-seed, and that's typically what is on our term sheets. We'll give you the money you need, but we want 15% in exchange, and that's it. Very clean, very straightforward. And that typically leads into the team owning maybe 55, 57% by B round.
We maybe have time for one more, so.
Hello, I'm Angelina from the Nordic Advocates, and I would like to ask about the connection of the founders and the board. How can the founders leverage the experience and connections of the board so that they can grow their business? Because just reporting, for example, the sales, we all know we have to increase them 5% the next quarter. We don't need the board to tell us, but how can we leverage the wisdom in a sense and the know-how of the board to make it even like 10%, for example?
Use coffee. Ask them for coffee. Feel the questions. Let them think about it. Sometimes they'll give you some answers, some opinions on the spot. Sometimes they want to take a couple of days to think about it. It's up to you to be active. And this is also something I've sometimes heard founders say, that our board members are like, they're useless. They really don't help us at all. And then when you ask them, when was the last time you talked? Well, they never called me, so I haven't talked to them. It's up to you as a management team and the CEO to activate your board. Force them to work for you. You're giving them options. Make sure you force them to really work for you. Another simple trick, I don't know if everybody knows this, but LinkedIn, you can export your whole LinkedIn database to an Excel file. When I was running sales at SSH and we had Sam Curry, one of the most prominent guy in the security industry in the US, in the board, Sam exported his whole LinkedIn file, all the connections, all the positions, all the emails, and handed me the Excel file. 3,500 CISOs in the US. Force your board members to do that. Force them to give you their contacts, their LinkedIn. Super great way to find leads.
Awesome. Is there something that we missed, something that you would want to still touch upon the area? It's okay if not, but
I feel trained out already, but I mean, I just maybe just to kind of appreciate all the founders, all in the crowd. Keep on going. You'll change the world for better. So don't stop. Keep pushing and go forward. Change the world.
Wonderful. Let's give a round of applause for Sami. Okay, so this was today's community breakfast. We still have time for you to stay around, network. Maybe if you have some questions, Sami might have a few minutes. So keep that in mind. This community breakfast was recorded, so you will have access to the recording in the next 2 weeks. We as well have on YouTube the previous ones. There's some on pre-seed fundraising. There's some on attracting employees and talent. And we will have this community breakfast roughly each month, once a month in the beginning. For the non-members here, I know there's few. If you are interested in becoming a member, we have we might have Hanna here. Yeah, so if you have any questions, I'll direct those to Hanna. So go and talk with Hanna, and Hanna will elaborate more. And for the members at Maria, we have prepared some activities for today. So Easter bunnies have been active last night, and there's plenty, over 100 eggs, Easter eggs, hidden all over the campus. So at 10 o'clock, so in 4 minutes, feel free to start searching for the eggs. And if you find any, feel free to post a photo on Slack on the random channel. That's all from me. I thank you all for coming and joining us for this breakfast.
So I'll certainly stay, but only for 4 minutes, because then I go egg hunting.
Thank you.